Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text number 5. Yavat kriyastavadidam manovai Karmatmakam ena sharira bandhaha Parabhava stavada bodha jato Yavanna jignasata atma tattvam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. As long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subjected to miseries arising from ignorance. Be it sinful or pious, karma has its resultant actions. If a person is engaged in any kind of karma, his mind is called Karmatmakam, colored with fruitive activity. As long as the mind is impure, consciousness is unclear, and as long as one is absorbed in fruitive activity, he has to accept a material body. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Generally, people think that one should act very piously in order to be relieved from misery, but this is not a fact. Even though one engages in pious activity and speculation, he is nonetheless defeated. His only aim should be emancipation from the clutches of Maya and all material. His only aim should be emancipation from the clutches of Maya and all the material activities. Speculative knowledge and pious activity do not solve the problems of material life. One should be inquisitive to understand his spiritual position. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Yathaidhamsi samidhognir bhasmasat kurute Arjuna Gnanagnihi sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. Unless one understands the self and its activities, one has to be considered in material bondage. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also said, Yenye aravindaksha vimuktamaninas Tvayasta asta bhavad avishuddha buddhayaha. A person who doesn't have knowledge of devotional service may think himself liberated, but actually he is not. Aruhya krichrena param padam tataha padantyadho anadruta yushmadanghrayaha. Such people may approach the impersonal Brahman effulgence, but they fall down again into material enjoyment because they have no knowledge of devotional service. As long as one is interested in karma and jnana, he continues enduring the miseries of material life, birth, old age, disease, and death. Karmis certainly take on one body after another. As far as jnanis are concerned, unless they are promoted to the topmost understanding, they must return to the material world. As explained in the Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. The point is to know Krishna, Vasudeva, as everything and surrender unto Him. Karmis do not know this, but a devotee who is 100% engaged in the devotional service of the Lord knows fully what is karma and jnana. Therefore, a pure devotee is no longer interested in karma or jnana. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavrutam. The real bhakta is untouched by any tinge of karma and jnana. His only purpose in life is to serve the Lord. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. So we are reading Rishabhadeva's teachings to his sons. And in today's verse, he is saying, Parabhava bodha jato yavanna jignasata atmatattvam. You must notice in this verse, the word tavat is there in the first line. And in the second line, you will find the word yavat. And again in the third line, if it is this, in the third line, yavat is there. And in the third line, you find again the expression tavat. Yavat kriyas tavat. So in this verse you can see yavat tavat structure. Yavat means as long as. Tavat means so long. So it's a very common structure in Sanskrit. Yavat defines a condition, and tavat says, if you fulfill that condition, this result you will get. When you are 18 years of age, you can get your driving license. If you are not 18 years of age, you cannot get. As long as you are not 18 years, so long you cannot get driving license. Right? If you are 14 years, 15 years, you apply for driving license, immediately you will get rejected. So, yavat, tavat is like that. So what is Rishabhadeva saying here? Yavat na jignasata atmatattvam. Atmatattvam means the truth about the soul. Atma tattva, the truth about the self. Na jignasata, if one does not inquire into Atma Tattva. Yavat na jignasata Atma Tattvam tavat Parabhava. If one, as long as one does not inquire into Atma Tattva, truth about oneself, so long all their activities will be Parabhavaha. Parabhavaha means complete defeat. It is a complete failure. This is the point. As long as one does not inquire into the truth about oneself, all his activities will be a defeat. That's the meaning. Yavan na jignasata atma tattvam tavat parabhavaha. And parabhavaha, there is also here abodha jataha. Abodha jataha parabhavaha. Defeat caused by ignorance. Bodha means enlightened. Buddha means enlightened person. So Buddha, abodha, not enlightened. Jataha, due to or caused by. Abodha jataha, parabhavaha. And that parabhavaha, defeat or failure, is caused by ignorance. So, if one does not inquire about Atma Tattva, everything in his life will be a defeat, a failure due to ignorance. Once in 1971, Srila Prabhupada gave a class on this verse in London. These Rishabhadeva's instructions were often quoted by Srila Prabhupada, because these verses are defining verses of Bhagavata Tattva. Bhagavata philosophy is defined in a very systematic way by Rishabhadeva. So this is the first Yavat-Tavat. And so, Prabhupada said, when he spoke on this verse in London, this great science the modern civilization doesn't know. What is contained in this first sentence, first line, first two lines, Prabhupada says is a great science which is not known to modern civilization. Once Prabhupada told one of his secretaries, who was also a GBC, a senior person, he said, you should write a book, How Everything is a Failure Without Knowledge of Self-realization. He is referring to this. Parabhavastavad abodha jato yavanna jignasata atma tattvam. If someone doesn't do atma tattva jignasa, who am I? What is my true nature? Where have I come from? What is my relation to the Supreme? And why this material world exists? How can I experience that relationship with the Supreme? If all this inquiry is not there, and we build great lives, modern civilization, either individually or collectively or a nation or as a world, everything is a defeat. This is one of the strong principles of Bhagavad Tattva. That's why Prabhupada paraphrased it in different ways. All the big things you do in the material world are like a string of zeros. It has no value. But when you understand yourself and your relation with Krishna, then you're adding one on the left side, and the number of zeros can become valuable. So, this is the first part of the verse, Yavat-Tavat. As long as one na jignasata atma tattvam, tavat parabhavaha. It's a defeat in life. What is the second one? Second part of the verse. Yavat kriyasthavadidam manovai karmatmakam ena sharira bandhaha. Sanskrit is such that it is composed with meter so that we can chant nicely like we were chanting. It lends itself for chanting. Because when it lends for chanting, you can commit to memory easily. And when you commit to memory, you can carry that knowledge wherever you go. That's the advantage. That's why the Vedic knowledge is presented in a metrical form. With chandas, it's called chandas. Many Indian languages also follow these principles. But in Sanskrit, another feature is, because so much of focus is there on making it metrical to follow a certain meter, the words can be juggled around. Actually, that's one of the characteristics of Sanskrit grammar. Say, for instance, you take an English word. The boy in a red shirt played a blue ball. Okay, boy in a red shirt played with a blue ball. Now, if I jumble it up, the boy with a red shirt, it can become a red ball, blue shirt, all that mixing can happen if I jumble it. But in Sanskrit, because the word endings are like that, even if you jumble it, when you put it back, it will read the same way. That's the nature of Sanskrit grammar. That's why you can jumble it for the sake of your metrical composition, but when you apply the laws of grammar, rules of grammar, it will come back to the right meaning. That's the nature of Sanskrit language. So that's why you will find these words here and there. When you reorganize it, it is called Anvaya. You are rearranging it to find out the meaning. So that's what we are doing. Yavanna jignasata. Here, of course, there is not so much of reorganization. Yavanna jignasata atmatattvam tavat parabhavaha. Tavat abodhajato parabhavaha. A little reorganizing. Now in the next part, Yavat kriyas tavadidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandhaha. Yena sharira bandhaha, we'll keep it aside for now. Yavat mano karmatmakam tavat kriyaha. As long as manas is karmatmakam, tavat kriyaha. As long as the mind is karmatmakam. This is a very important point Srila Prabhupada points out. Karmatmakam, karma. Karma is one of the contaminations that is discussed. Anya bilashita shunyam jnana karmadhyanavrutam. Bhakti should be uncovered, untouched by karma and jnana contamination. That is Rupa Goswami's definition of Shuddha Bhakti. What is the karma contamination? What is the jnana contamination? So, the word karma, here karmatmakam, mano karmatmakam, manaha karmatmakam, when the mind is karmatmakam. Karmatmakam means an understanding which says, I will work hard, earn profit, and enjoy myself. This kind of a spirit is called Karmatmakam. Every conditioned soul has this as a serious contamination. We want to work hard, we want to earn the profit, and we want to enjoy the results. This is called Karmatmakam. When the mind is filled with such a desire, I must work, get result, and enjoy for myself. Who are we? I have to work. Okay, who am I? Suppose I'm working, and then I'll get some result by some arrangement. And that result, what do? I enjoy. In this spirit of, I will work hard, earn profit, enjoy myself. In this, we are lacking. We don't know who we are. We don't know what this work is and how the work produces a certain result. We think that by my work, result is coming. And when that result comes, I must enjoy. Because after all, it's my work and I have worked hard. There is ignorance in all aspects in this conception. And hence, it's a contamination that we have to be freed from. So, here Rishabhadeva is saying, Mano Karmatmakam Yavat Manaha Karmatmakam. As long as mind is colored or contaminated with this Karmatmakam understanding, Tavat Kriyaha, he will be absorbed in fruitive activities, in activities, various kinds of activities. A person is engaged in activities as long as his mind is colored or contaminated with that karma sense, he will be engaged in kriyaha, in various kinds of activities. Yena sharira bandhaha. And those activities will result in sharira bandhaha. He has to take body after body, life after life. Now we will read the translation and we'll see how Srila Prabhupada has nicely captured all these points. As long as, you see here, Yavat, as long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, Atma Tattvam na jignasata, one is defeated, Parabhavaha, and subjected to miseries. Parabhava, another sense of the word Parabhavaha is defeat, failure, misery. That's why in the word to word meaning Prabhupada translated Parabhavaha, defeat and misery. Why this is considered a defeat? Because again and again we have to take a material body, and the material body means there is birth, death, old age, disease. Adhyatmik, adi daivik, adi bhautik kleshas. We have to suffer. So as long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, here Prabhupada has translated the word Atma Tattvam as spiritual values of life. Because there is a spiritual value to our life, ourself. We are not inquiring about that. We are thinking we are the body. I must take care of this body nicely. One is defeated, Tavat. One is defeated and subject to miseries. And all this arising from ignorance. Abodha jataha. Next. Be it sinful or pious, karma has its resultant actions. Prabhupada is developing an understanding. Because karma is talking, it's about karma. If a person is engaged in any kind of karma, his mind is called Karmatmaka. Manaha Karmatmakam. Colored with fruitive activity. Next, Prabhupada says, as long as Yavat, second Yavat, as long as the mind is impure, as long as Yavat Manaha Karmatmakam, consciousness is unclear, Manaha Karmatmakam, and as long as one is absorbed in fruitive activity, Tavat Kriyaha, Yavat Karmatmakam Manaha, Tavat Kriyaha, and Yena, by which he has to accept a material body, Sharira Bandhaha. So, like this, very carefully Srila Prabhupada is translating. Very carefully we should read and understand and appreciate these messages of the Bhagavatam. So, this is a serious contamination, and this contamination of Karmatmakam can be addressed by devotional service. And here Prabhupada brings two things in the purport. Because Jnana Karma Dhyanavritam, one is karma contamination, fruitive activities. Prabhupada many times uses that word, fruitive act. Actually, Krishna addresses this fruitive activity gradually. You see, in the second chapter, Krishna says, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Krishna said, it is your duty to perform your work. Karmanyeva adhikaraha. Ma phaleshu kadachana. You have adhikara over your karma, the actions you perform, and not for the results. Krishna did not tell what should be done with the results there. And that's why modern day karmis in our country, they like this sentence. Karmanyevadhikara. See, such a nice thing. Because they apply it to their material life. I should do my work, very hard work. Whether they know their experience is sometimes results don't come. They have experienced that. And when results don't come, they get disappointed, depressed. They don't want to get depressed. So they apply this principle. See, you only have right to perform your duty. Do your duty nicely. Whether the results come or not, don't worry about that. So that inspires them to work hard so that they can enjoy. When the results come, you enjoy. When the results don't come, don't get depressed. Continue to work hard again because you only have a right to perform your duty. That's what Krishna has said, not for your result. You see, they are conveniently applying that principle to motivate themselves. But that's only a part of the truth. Krishna is gradually going to tell what should be done with the result. So, later on, Krishna tells who he is and what you should do with the result. That comes in the 9th chapter. That's why 9th chapter, idam tute guhyatamam pravakshami anasuyave. Krishna is telling that I'm going to tell you something very confidential in this chapter. And actually what Krishna tells is about himself, who he is. And that as he gradually tells, he makes one statement, a very strong statement. Aham hi sarva yagnanam bhokta cha prabhurevacha. All the sacrifices that are mentioned in the Vedic literature, I am the master, I am the enjoyer. Everything should be performed for my enjoyment. You see, if somebody hears that one, if somebody is not devoted, devotionally inclined, see, oh, what is this Krishna making such a statement? Everything, I am the master, I am the enjoyer. But that's the fact. Everything is coming from him. He is the master. He is the enjoyer. Aham hi sarva yagnanam. Not some one or two yagna he left for others. No. Everything is meant for aham prabhureva bhokta cha prabhureva cha. And one who does not know this, I'll read that verse. Aham hi sarva yagnanam bhokta cha prabhurev cha natu mam abhijananti tattvena taschavanti te. Natu mam abhijananti tattvena. Tattvena mam na abhijananti. One who does not know the truth about me. Chavanti te. They fall down. They fall into this material world. And so those who are fallen into this material world, if they want to rectify, they have to understand aham hi sarva yagnanam bhukta cha prabhureva cha natu mam abhijananti tattvena chavanti te. Tattvena ataha Ataha tatvena na abhijananti, mam na abhijananti, one who does not know me to be, this is the truth about me. I am the Bhokta, I am the Prabhu of Sarvayagnanam. And after saying all this, then Krishna says, what you should do with the result. Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yad juhoshi, dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi, kaunteya, tat kurushva, madarpanam. You should offer the result to me. You have a right to perform your duty, not for the result. And what should you do with the result? You should offer it to me. So, to come to this point, it requires a little bit of a humility. It requires a little bit of a preparedness to understand Krishna. And one must have faith in Krishna's words. One should not doubt. One should not question. One should not doubt. That's why in the 9th chapter, after saying that I'm going to tell you this very confidential knowledge, Krishna puts a condition. Ashraddha dhana purusha dharmasyasya parantapa. Aprapya mam nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani. I'm going to tell you this knowledge. If you don't have faith in my words, you will not attain me and you will be in the cycle of birth and death. So, this is the important. And so Krishna has said, so Prabhupada has brought out this principle of karma and jnana as contamination. What is the jnana contamination? So we should not be interested in jnana, is it? Then why should we read Prabhupada's books? We should not be interested in jnana. This is all jnana. No. It is not. Reading Prabhupada's books, that's not the jnana contamination that is being described by Rupa Goswami in his Shuddha Bhakti definition. Jnana refers to, actually there are two defining features of jnana which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is referring to, Rupa Goswami is referring to. One is jnana which is speculative. Not taking the knowledge from the Shastra as it is, or taking the knowledge and speculating around it. And secondly, the second feature of jnana contamination is to come to the conclusion that by speculative knowledge, I must merge into Brahman existence. These two features of jnana constitutes the jnana contamination. Why? The reason is, Prabhupada is quoting this verse, yatha yedhamsi samiddhognir bhasmasat kurute Arjuna. This is a verse from the 4th chapter. 4th chapter is where Krishna talks about tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena. Approach a spiritual master. He will instruct you in spiritual knowledge because he has seen the truth. So it's about approaching a spiritual master and receiving knowledge. So in that context, Krishna is saying this knowledge is so important that this knowledge Yedhamsi sammidho agnihi. Edhamsi means edham means, edhas means firewood. Sammidaha means blazing. Blazing agnihi. Sammidho agnihi. Edhamsi bhasmasat kurute. It turns firewood to bhasma, ashes. Yatha, as sammidho agnihi edhamsi bhasmasat kurute Arjuna, tathaha, in the same way, gnanagni, the fire of knowledge. Sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute. It can turn all the reactions, all the karma contamination in the heart into ashes. Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. So jnana is being glorified. But here when the word jnana, jnanagni, jnana, it is referring to the knowledge of the self, the super self, the material world, and the relationship, and how to act, that knowledge. That knowledge, jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. So, jnana is not to be, so we have to understand what kind of a jnana is appreciated, what kind of a jnana is considered a contamination. Also, Prabhupada warns that this jnana of the self and the super self and the relation, this is not a result of just scholarship. Just because somebody becomes a scholar of Vedic literature, there is no guarantee he will understand. It is by surrender. Now, one last thing I want to show. This is another important verse in the Bhagavatam, which uses the Yavat-Tavat structure, which we saw in two places. Rishabhadeva, in this verse, he has used. As long as, so long you won't get this. As long as you meet this, you don't meet this condition, you cannot get this result. So, this is another famous verse of Prabhupada, often quoted, of Prahalad Maharaj's teachings. And we will see how Prahalad Maharaj uses the same Yavat-Tavat, and what is the implication of that, we will see little carefully. Naisham matis tavad urukramangrim. Already Tavat has come. You see? Naisham matis tavad urukramangrim sprushatyanarthopagamam yadarthaha mahiyasam padharajobhishekam nishkinchananam na vrinita yavat. See, you can see here, Yavat, Tavat. Tavat came in the first line. Yavat is coming in the last line. So Prahalad Maharaj is saying, Yavat, Nishkinchananam Mahiyasham Padharajobhishekam Navrinita. As long as one does not take the dust from the lotus feet of a pure devotee and smear it on his body, Padharajobhishekam Navrinita Yavat, as long as one has not done that, Naisham matistavad urukramangrim, one will not develop na esham matihi, urukramangrim matihi. Matihi, consciousness. In two verses before, Prahalad Maharaj used another word. Krishna, Matirna Krishne Paratasvatova. These are all Prahalad talking to his father. Matirna Krishne Paratasvatova Krishna Matihi. Krishna Mati means Krishna consciousness. See how nicely Prabhupada has used the word. So frequently we use the word Krishna consciousness. It's right there in the Bhagavatam. Krishna Matihi. And Prabhupada wanted an institution to be created simply for creating and spreading this Krishna Matihi. Such a faithful representation and implementation of the true message of the Bhagavatam by Srila Prabhupada. It's very special. So, Naisham matistavad urukramangrim, na esham matihi, na matihi. You will not develop. Sprushati anartha upagamam. Anartha upagamam. Unless the anarthas go, this matihi won't come. And that will happen. That will not happen as long as one does not take the lotus feet, dust from the lotus feet of a Mahiyasham Padarajobhishekam. Mahiyasam. And how should that Mahiyasam be? Nishkinchananam. He should be somebody who is completely free from all contaminations. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, one must take shelter of a spiritual master, and that spiritual master must be Mahiyasham, and that spiritual master must be free from all material contamination. Not any simple devotee. He must be an exalted devotee. One must take shelter of a self-realized spiritual master, not a materially educated scholar or politician. One must take shelter of a Nishkinchana, a person engaged in devotional service and free from material contamination. That is the way to return home back to Godhead. So here in this verse, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, as long as one does not take the dust from the lotus feet of a pure devotee and take shelter of him, one will not be able to develop that Krishna Matihi Urukramangri Matihi. Matihi Urukrama Angri means the lotus feet of consciousness of the lotus feet of Krishna. In other words, Krishna consciousness. So, a defining criteria to become Krishna conscious is one must take shelter of a pure devotee. If one does not take shelter of a pure devotee, there is no hope of becoming Krishna conscious. And that is why it's so important to know who is our spiritual master, who is the person whom we must surrender to utterly. Take his instructions as our life and soul. We must know that. And we can see how sadly in the larger ISKCON this point is missed out. They have this conception that one should take shelter of a spiritual master who is a Mahabhagavata. This is the instruction. This is what Prabhupada taught. Everyone would speak like that in the early days in pre-77. You must take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master who is a Mahabhagavata. Today in ISKCON they don't say that anymore. Because so many gurus are falling down. They know it's not Mahabhagavata. They were not Mahabhagavatas. And so they have changed the principle itself. Whereas Prahlad Maharaj's teaching is, unless you take shelter of a purified spirit, pure spiritual master, self-realized spiritual master who is completely Nishkinchananam Mahiyasam, and take his Pada Rajaha, Rajaha means dust, and Pada Rajobhishekam. Unless you do that, you will not, Nishkinchana na vrunita yavat. You will not have that. Krishna Matihi. So, these are important principles to be appreciated in these verses of Rishabhadeva. We'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.